Hello everybody. So in this video, I am sharing my top 10 stocks, my biggest positions, and these are the valuation for all of these stocks based on enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth, which is a favorite metric on my channel and which allows me to answer the question, how much am I paying for that growth? What is the general cost that I'm getting for that company? And it's noteworthy to say that I would not consider any of these stocks to be that expensive right now. Even Tesla, when you consider the 10% drop that we had 2 days ago. I don't find any of these stocks overly valued. And that is where I differ, I think, from a lot of value investors who would consider perhaps most of these stocks to be overvalued. But anyways, if you're not new to the channel, feel free to pause. This is the updated spreadsheet with updated valuations. But if you're new to the channel, what I do in this recurring video that I publish every week is I explain the way I invest and I explain my technique. And I also go through each of these stocks and tell you why I own them. So if it's your first time on the channel, let me get started by telling you my technique for investing and how I do this. So I invest in hyper-growth stocks. And why hyper-growth stocks? Well, because the S&P 500 and even the NASDAQ is not enough for me, because in my view of the world, the US dollar is getting diluted, right? There's new dollars being issued year after year, and they're being issued per my estimate, and I've done a full analysis on this, per my estimate at 15% per year is what they're being issued at. So that's why I considered something like a 15% return. I consider this return to be no real return, because there is monetary inflation. There's more dollars going around, and if the commercial banking system, the euro-dollar system, issues, say, 15% more dollar each year, then those companies need to grab 15% more dollars in order to just stay afloat. And if you grab less than 15%, you sink. And I realize that my estimate of monetary growth is higher than a lot of pundits or a lot of commentary people, for example, that talk about M2 money stock. But that's because we forget about the euro-dollar system. The euro-dollar system is a very shadowy system, and there's a lot of dollars being created in the euro-dollar system. It's bigger than M2, and it's growing extremely, extremely fast. That's why I estimate it to be 15%. The most conservative writings that you can find really today on monetary growth is about 7 to 8%. If you really want it to be conservative, to me, it's about 15%. So I want to beat that. I want to beat 15% in revenue growth for my companies. I have no choice to do that, right? I love a ton of stocks, I like Costco, I like Chipotle, but these companies, to me, they're not going to beat the denominator growth, denominator expansion. Big tech, I like big tech a lot too, but it's tough to see Apple beating monetary expansion. They might match it. But if they just match it, then they're just staying afloat. And if they're not above 15%, in my view, they're drowning. Therefore, I don't have a choice because there's so many new dollars being issued. My only choice is hyper growth. Only hyper growth can beat that 15% revenue growth threshold. So that's why I do innovation. I have no choice because most of the companies that you see here are very innovative stocks. The products are not consensus products. They're not products that everybody agrees on. And we know that whenever we have an innovation, we get what we call an exponential adoption curve. And the exponential part, right, is this corner of the S-curve. This spot in the S-curve is really where exponentiality grows. And the whole idea of my style of investing is that when I invest in products, before those products become mainstream, really get out about 5% adoption and get out once the product is adopted at 70 to 80%. And this is a 10 to 15 year process. And so this is my general style of investing, which is why I focus on enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth, which is a spin on the PEG ratio of Peter Lynch, the price to earnings growth of Peter Lynch. That's my own spin without earnings, right? I'm not using earnings because in my view and in my style of investing, by the time earnings start to matter, you are later in the growth stock and I would likely be out of the stock. So this is my style of investing. Let me now go tell you about each stock in my spreadsheet and why they are top positions. So my first position is Tesla. Lots of content out there about Tesla. Tesla is obviously revolutionizing car. In a general sense, what's my idea of Tesla is right now, adoption in the US for Tesla is about 4 to 5%-ish. We are going to see electric cars be 80 to 90% of all of the cars sold within 10 years. That is my deep conviction of this. And so the question is, what's going to be Tesla's market share? Is it going to stay 65 to 70%? Is Tesla going to be 70% of the car market? Well, if it is, you have tremendously exponential growth. And I haven't even started touching, over aspects of Tesla. Like it's really the Standard Oil of today. It's a diversified company. It's got so many different areas that have growth curves all hitting at the same time. And really, the whole idea behind electric is, of course, you have to get below the technology and ask yourself, how many times better is the product? Is the product 10 times better? Is the product 100 times better? I think for Tesla, it's at the very least 10 times better, right? Electric cars accelerate the fastest. They are extremely cheap to operate, about 7 to 13 times cheaper to operate than a gas vehicle. They have way fewer moving parts, which means fewer repairs. They last longer. It's an understatement to say it's an order of magnitude better. And when you have that, well, you get into a situation where Tesla's sales are growing 50%, while the rest of the auto sector is collapsing with sales down 30%. That's in a nutshell. And clearly this adoption is happening. And when you go back to the history of Tesla and look at the long-term return, right, on a 10-year period, Tesla, you can see, has returned 53% on average compounded over 10 years. And of course, to me, because there's monetary inflation, I would subtract my 15% monetary inflation and I get a 38% real return. Tesla fits well within the goal of my channel, which is to identify stocks that are going to have 30% returns. Let me move on to another revolution. The other revolution is residential solar. It's taking off all around the world. It's taking off in Europe. It's taking off in the US. The US is about 4% adoption. Europe is a little higher with 10% adoption. And this is the same story. The story is, right now you drive in a neighborhood, you see between 5 and 10% of roofs that have solar. Within 10 years, my view is that 90% of these roofs will have solar because utilities are going to have to make crazy investments, and there's going to be crazy rise in costs, as we've seen, in costs of energy. And because of the rise in costs of energy, solar is just going to get exponentially more compelling because solar is getting cheaper at the same time as electric utility rates are getting more expensive, which creates a scissors effect, which is making solar just so much more compelling, right? And free electricity, how many orders of magnitude is free electricity compared to paying it from your electric utility? Well, it's hard to tell, but 2 orders of magnitude, 3 orders of magnitude, something like that, right? And there's a duopoly. It's Enphase and SolarEdge. That's the duopoly right now. And I invest in Enphase because I believe they have a technically superior solution thanks to microinverters. Microinverters allow your system to really grow and evolve with you. And there's so much going on with microinverters. I've done a full video on Enphase. In a nutshell, and this is the last total return screenshot that I'll show, you can see that Enphase, 42%, let's round it up to 43% over 10 years return. That's very close to Tesla. Enphase and Tesla are my 2 favorite companies right now. If you look at adoption and product adoption, and if you actually believe that, yes, 90% of the cars will be electric within 10 years and 90% of the roofs will have solar on them, like residential roof will have solar on them, then in my view, these companies are just at the beginning of their exponential growth curve, or their cost curve, and I don't see any slowdown coming for these companies. Let me move on to other companies that I really like. HIMS is one of them. Why do I like HIMS? HIMS is seeing really, really quick adoption of its products. Revenue growth is actually at 56%. Right now, they keep beating the guidance. I put 50% there because that's the long-term guidance that they provided us with. And it's the future of healthcare, in my opinion. HIMS is an e-pharmacy and an e-doctor together in an app. You get an app, you get the HIMS app, it pairs you with a doctor, and if you see the doctor and the doctor thinks you have a health need, you can get your prescription with HIMS. And HIMS often gets reduced to this company that, say, only sells ED drugs or hair loss products, but these categories are growing very, very fast, but the company has a much more holistic mission of providing many, many more products than just, half a dozen products. There's also a big trend in healthcare with HIMSS, in the sense that you don't have insurance as the gatekeeper and you don't have cost as the gatekeeper, because it's a system that operates fully outside of a healthcare system. You don't have the red tape, you don't have the bureaucracy. You can get an app and get care. It's the whole modern day culture of oftentimes we say the Amazon buy now culture. With HIMSS, you can buy healthcare now. And of course, because it's a fully digital pharmacy, because unlike CVS, it doesn't have 7,000 brick and mortar locations, you can get it so much cheaper. You can get it discreetly at your house. And really, this is disruption of pharmacies. This is disruption of health systems, right? Health systems and doctors organized within health system versus doctors moving onto a platform and having those doctors be on that platform, right? It's just like hotels versus Airbnbs, and of course AI is gonna be a big role. I really believe in HIMSS. I've done a full video on HIMSS, 1 hour analysis of HIMSS, where you can get all of my thoughts and my first principle thinking with HIMSS. Another stock that I really like is Palantir. Palantir, I love the commercial product of Palantir, right? The foundry is doing very well, but I believe they're doing even better with a military product. We have an uncontested leader in AI for the military of the Western world. And there's a lot of good things going on. I like that the CEO of Palantir has given us a guidance, 30% growth over the next decade. If you compound that, that can lead to a multiple X type of return. And I love that it was founded by Peter Thiel, right? Peter Thiel is part of the PayPal mafia. The founders in the PayPal mafia include Elon Musk, right? So it's the same DNA, that DNA of a product that is radically different, radically better. That is a 0 to 1 move, not a 1 to many move, as his famous book says. And clearly, Palantir has created the 0 to 1 move in the military world, in the military intelligence, and they have a shot, I believe, at becoming the fourth contractor of a military industrial complex of the United States. So that's one of the big reasons why I like Palantir very much so. Moving on to Crowdstrike. Crowdstrike also gave us impressive guidance, impressive revenue growth at 35% over the next 3 years. Crowdstrike is in the field of AI, but for endpoint security. And so what happens, how does Crowdstrike work? Because their software Falcon is installed on the most computers out there. Whenever you have a breach somewhere of a laptop, of an endpoint device, whatever it is, Crowdstrike learns about that breach and broadcasts a fix for that breach to its entire network. So the more nodes is added to the network, the better the antivirus will be. Because if you have, say, 1 billion computers that have the antivirus software, and there's just one out of those 1 billion computers that get compromised, right? And I'm talking down the road. They don't have that many right now. But just one computer being compromised means that you can broadcast to the whole network and update in real life your cyber security, your antivirus, as I like to call it, and it's a cloud security software. And I believe I believe Crowdstrike. If there is one example of a winner take most market, I believe that's going to be Crowdstrike, which is why I do not invest in Sentinel-1. Moving on to MercadoLibre. So MercadoLibre, of course, I love Amazon. I love the returns that Alibaba has seen. These companies have been amazing, but they're mature now. They're mature companies, and e-commerce is still growing very, very fast. In the US, adoption is a little north of 30%. Adoption is lower in Latin America, and they're earlier in their growth curve. And really, it's getting adopted extremely fast, which is why MercadoLibre has been able to grow really fast in Latin America. With MercadoLibre, you get a fairly impressive business. You get logistics, you get ads, you get fintech, you get the e-commerce platform. You get all of this in one. And the returns have been outstanding for MercadoLibre. If you really look at it, the average annual return over the past 13 years has been 27% compounded. And actually, if you go back before the crash, right, because we're still in a little bit of a crash right now. If you go back before the crash, that was 35% plus average annual return compounded before the crash. So this is well above my 30%. And I very much enjoy owning MercadoLibre. Moving on to StoneCo. StoneCo is my only small cap on here, along with HIMS. StoneCo to me is a play on payments, digital payments in Brazil, and Brazil is a country that is constituted of so many small businesses, and these small businesses are adopted a payment method just like Square in the US, and the transformation of Square terminals, that transformation was brought in 2015, 2016, 2014, and we saw these terminals be pervasive. I believe Brazil is going from a similar situation where those payment terminals are becoming pervasive, and they're being provided by StoneCo and PagSeguro, which is a competitor of StoneCo. To me, they're a duopoly in Brazil on the payment network. They also had very impressive integration with Wix, which is what their central bank did. And the stock is dirt cheap, which really makes me love StoneCo, because the stock is dirt cheap. It's one of the cheapest in my spreadsheet, along with HIMS. It really got battered by the market, and I think this is unfair. Noteworthy, StoneCo is a stock that's loved by both Warren Buffett and Cathie Wood, and it's so rare to see a queen of value of innovative investing. Sorry, a queen of innovation and innovative investing with a king of value investing, both liking this stock. I believe this is a very interesting story. Moving on to Nubank. Nubank is kind of a similar story, but with neobanks. So what is neobanks? Well, neobanks is the end of a branch, the bet on the end of the branch. We don't need branches anymore because we are cash. I mean, cash is slowly disappearing. Governments want cash to disappear. And Gen Z, quite frankly, don't use cash at all. I mean, very little. And the generation after Gen Z will almost never use cash, right? They want Robux for their birthday if they don't want cash. And so if cash disappears, there's really no need for infrastructure, for banking infrastructure. That's the force behind the thesis of investing in a neobank, a digital-only bank, an app-only bank, right? And of course, the products that they can provide are so much better because they don't have that cost structure. Just like the prices that HIMS can provide on pharmacy is so much better because it doesn't have thousands of brick-and-mortar pharmacies. Neobanks, in my view, they're going to be much better because they don't have thousands of brick-and-mortar branches. And I like Nubank very much. The reason why I like Nubank over SoFi right now is because of the whole SoFi student loan overhang. You know, SoFi went up only because of a student loan. The market is still associating SoFi with student loans. I would love the market to stop associating SoFi with student loans, but it does. And I believe there is uncertainty with the presidential campaign coming up. There is uncertainty on student loans. You know, I could totally see a presidential debate and something mentioned about student loan and SoFi going down because something new is mentioned about student loan. Let's say, oh, we're going to have a moratorium or something like that. So just a tiny reason why I prefer Nubank. Moving on to Airbnb. So why do I love Airbnb? Because hotels, they've never ever been disrupted. And it's time. They're getting disrupted now. Airbnb is a careful capital allocator. They exploit a lot of pre-existing capital, pre-existing room in houses. You know, they disrupt the world of rental living as a whole. It's not just vacation. They're moving away from vacation. I mean, they're still having vacation, but they're adding more features than vacation. And I view Airbnb as a much more holistic platform for living your life as a renter. Right? And it's kind of a polar opposite, say, an Open Door, which is an holistic platform for living your life as a home buyer or as a homeowner. In my view, it's a best cost product, especially if you travel with multiple people or if you're trying to get a unique experience or differentiated experience. And we've had explosive growth and adoption, especially among millennials, among Gen Z. And I see this trend continuing. And Airbnb is, in my view, at the beginning of its cost curve. And it's a true 0 to 1 move. It is not like, say, a booking.com, right? A booking.com, it's just a modern way to book something. Right, and Airbnb is a new way of conceptualizing housing in a rental, in the form of a rental, a new way of conceptualizing travel, if that makes sense, and living. If you quote unquote live on Airbnb and travel all the time, that's a new way of conceptualizing that, and that's a true 0 to 1 move. And I believe they are a major disruptor. And the last one that I have in my portfolio is Bitcoin in general, but my proxy for Bitcoin is Microstrategy. Microstrategy is my proxy for Bitcoin. So of course it's not going to fit in any of these categories because Microstrategy is trading based on its Bitcoin treasury and how much Bitcoin it holds. But I like Microstrategy because you can put it in your brokerage and of course owning pure form Bitcoin is always better. But I have a position in Microstrategy in my brokerage as well as real Bitcoin. But why Bitcoin in general? And it doesn't matter what you buy. You could even buy GBTC, by the way. GBTC is the fund that holds Bitcoin, and they're trying to turn it into an ETF. We've been talking about this for years. Maybe one day. So you could own a GBTC type fund, not investment advice, of course, but. If you look at the return, so GBTC closely tracks the return of Bitcoin, you're at 78% return. And you're at 78% return. Why? Because in my view, the way I look at Bitcoin is I look at it as an alternative to bonds. Because, unlike bonds, Bitcoin has no counterparty risk. It's just an asset that you own on the network, and it is capped, and you can't create more than the pre-coded schedule, right? And there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins. And it's also, as far as correlation goes, I believe this is important, it's also the one asset that is not a derivative of a US dollar. And it's really tough to find an asset that is not a derivative of a US dollar, but Bitcoin is. It's schmuck insurance in case the USD becomes like the Bolivar or the Argentinian peso or the Turkish lira. That's, in my view, what Bitcoin is. And when you see these charts, like when you, for example, you try to quote Bitcoin in Turkish lira, you realize that Bitcoin never ever crashed and never ever went down because currencies are getting diluted very fast. And Bitcoin is only slightly getting diluted and will stop being diluted because we know there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin because the code is protected by a wall of servers and energy which makes the code nearly unbreakable. So this was not investment advice. This is just entertainment. I hope you were entertained. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I appreciate your likes and your subscribes to my channel. Thank you all.